my dad sent me a luxury gift box for my birthday. Giving it away nearly ended in disaster. Want to know why? My name is Jordan Blake. I'm 32 years old, a senior graphic designer living in Chicago, and for the first time in my life, I thought I had things under control, until a box of chocolates nearly killed my nephew. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Stick around till the end. I promise you don't want to miss this. And while you're here, hit that subscribe button. Growing up under Harold Blake wasn't like growing up under a father. It was more like living in a boardroom by a CEO who happened to share your DNA. My father measured love and obligations and apologies in dollar signs. He was a respected cardiologist, a man admired by his colleagues and feared by his family. As for my mother, Vivian, she disappeared from our lives when I was 14. At least that's what I believed for most of my life. The full truth that came much later. My younger brother Miles and I were left in the care of a man who viewed parenting as a contract, one filled with fine print and no opt-out clause. When I finally moved out for college, I chose a campus close enough to keep the peace, but far enough to breathe. Eventually, I carved out a new life in Chicago. A modest apartment with sunlight that didn't feel borrowed, friends who didn't require performance, and a job that respected my voice and vision. I kept contact with my father to a minimum monthly phone calls that were more weather reports than conversations, but I kept the door cracked, not out of hope, but out of caution. With men like Harold, silence is often interpreted as challenge. And then came my 32nd birthday. It fell on a Saturday in early April. Spring was just beginning to thaw the chill out of Chicago. I'd planned the perfect weekend morning yoga, brunch with Melissa and Jared, my two closest friends, and a quiet evening sketching by candlelight with a glass of wine. No fuss, no drama, just peace. My peace. After brunch, I returned home to find a sleek, silver-wrapped package sitting at my doorstep. The handwriting on the card was unmistakable, elegant, rigid, and sharp, like everything else about Harold Blake. Happy birthday, Jordan. Enjoy these sweet treats. Dad. There was something disarming about the gift. It wasn't expensive jewelry I'd never wear, or another passive-aggressive book about achieving your potential. It was chocolates, an ornate wooden box engraved in gold. Le Million du Choca, a Parisian brand, the kind of indulgence you gift someone when you're either trying to apologize or trying to manipulate without making it look like manipulation. I hesitated. My father didn't do sweet. He did strategy, but they were chocolates. And for one reckless moment, I allowed myself to believe. Maybe he was softening. Maybe the years had worn him down into something resembling a human being. That afternoon, my brother Miles texted. He and Leo, his 6-year-old son, were in town. Their babysitter had canceled, and he was juggling shifts at the restaurant he managed. I told them to come over. I'd make dinner. I missed them anyway. When they arrived 2 hours later, Leo launched himself into my arms like a rocket made of joy. He handed me a handmade card that looked more like abstract art than birthday wishes. It was perfect. And then he spotted the chocolates. Aunt Jordan, he whispered, eyes wide. Are those real? Like movie chocolates? I laughed. They're all yours, buddy. His mouth dropped open like I just handed him a golden ticket. I told them to take the whole box. I had lemon cupcakes waiting in the fridge. And besides, 50 pieces of gourmet chocolate wasn't a treat. It was a burden. Leo picked out a seashell-shaped milk chocolate. Miles chose a dark square dusted with gold shimmer. I remember him holding it up to the light and saying, "This feels too fancy to eat." They each had one before dinner, then another after. We played board game spaghetti, Leo's favorite, and for a few hours, the world felt exactly right. When they left that night, Leo clutched the box like treasure. I stood at the door, watching them disappear down the hall, feeling something unfamiliar. Contentment. For once, I hadn't been haunted by the past. I hadn't analyzed every word from my father's card or interrogated the hidden meanings behind his gesture. I'd let go, if only for a night. I fell asleep with the windows open, the scent of rain in the air, and a strange hope blooming inside me. That hope would die less than 12 hours later. Because at 8:14 the next morning, my phone rang, and my father's voice, usually so calculated, was panicked. "Jordan," he barked, "tell me you didn't eat the chocolates." Confused, I sat up in bed. "Number, I gave them to Miles and Leo." "Why?" Silence. Then a sound I'll never forget. The sharp intake of breath followed by words that fractured the world I thought I knew. "Oh my God," he whispered. "You have no idea what you've done." The silence that followed my father's outburst was thick enough to taste. I stared at my phone, still warm against my cheek, as if the weight of his panic had transferred through the speaker. My mind couldn't make sense of what I just heard. My pulse quickened, a thud, thud, thud against my ribs like fists on a locked door. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "They're chocolates." "No," he growled. "They were never meant to be eaten." Those 7 words lodged in my throat like a swallowed shard of glass. "What do you mean, they weren't meant to be eaten, Leo?" Leo already had some. So did Miles. There was a rustling sound, the distinct slap of palm to forehead. When my father finally spoke again, his voice had lost all its usual authority. It trembled. I was audited. The IRS flagged a few irregularities, nothing major, but enough to make me cautious. I had to move some things off-site discreetly. That medication, it's from Mexico. I couldn't risk it being linked to me. "What medication?" I asked, voice hoarse. "Vasodilators, Hydra, for my heart. The new U.S. version costs over $8,000 a quarter. I found a supplier across the border." My stomach clenched. "You smuggled heart medication in a box of gourmet chocolates." I hollowed out each piece carefully, sealed them back with a culinary torch. The dosage was adult, Jordan. Strong. Not meant for a child. A chill settled into my bones. Leo was 6, barely 40 pounds, and I'd handed him poison wrapped in velvet and gold. "Why would you send it to me?" "I needed it out of the house temporarily. I was going to pick it up next week." "You didn't think to mention that?" I hissed. "Maybe leave a note. A warning. Anything?" "I couldn't," he snapped. "What if someone found it, Jordan? You don't understand. This wasn't just about me. I have patients depending on me. If I lose my license..." "Stop." I said every syllable like iron. "Don't you dare make this about your patients. A child might be dying, and all you care about is your damn career." There was a beat of silence, and then, "Where are they now?" "I don't know," I whispered, already leaping from bed. "They left last night. Miles said they might go to the park this morning. I've been calling. He hasn't answered." "Don't call him," my father barked. "We don't want him panicking. I'll drive there. Meet me." He hung up. But I was already moving. Clothes were thrown on, keys snatched from their bowl. My hands trembled so badly I dropped my phone twice before finally managing to send a single urgent text. "Call me now. It's an emergency. Leo is in danger." Then I ran down 10 flights of stairs into my car through a city still half asleep. The Sunday morning calm shattered by the storm inside me. I've never driven faster in my life. Each red light felt like a betrayal. Each turn a prayer that I wasn't already too late. When my phone finally buzzed, my heart stopped. It was Miles. 2 words. At park. No emojis, no punctuation, just location. But at least they were still alive. The park was small, nestled between apartment complexes, its jungle gym rusting but proud. As I pulled into the lot, I spotted my father's sleek black sedan, crookedly parked, door ajar, engine still humming. And there he was, Harold Blake, pounding on the front door of Miles's building like a man possessed. His silver hair disheveled, his voice raw. "This is your fault," he snarled the moment he saw me, his finger jabbing like a knife. "You handed them death, Jordan. You gave away what wasn't yours to give." I didn't answer. I couldn't. The door opened. Miles stood there confused, holding a juice box in one hand, Leo's tiny backpack slung over his shoulder. "Dad? Jordan? What is happening?" Then I saw Leo standing behind him, Chocolate smeared at the corner of his mouth. I stepped forward slowly, as if sudden movement might shatter the moment entirely. "Leo?" I whispered, kneeling. "How many chocolates did you eat?" He held up 4 fingers proudly. "I had 4. They tasted like fireflies." Beside me, Miles frowned. "I had a few too. They had a weird aftertaste. Bitter." My father pushed into the apartment, frantic. "Where's the box? We need it." Leo pointed. The ornate container sat open on the coffee table. 1/3 of the chocolates gone. 7 missing. 7 pills. I looked at my father, whose face had gone gray, and suddenly, for the first time in my life, I saw him clearly, not as the towering figure of discipline and dominance, but as a man, small, afraid, weak. "What's going on?" Miles demanded. I turned to him and broke the silence. The chocolates were laced with heart medication, strong, illegal. Dad smuggled them from Mexico and hid them inside the candy. The air left the room like a sucked-out vacuum. And then Miles exploded. "You what?" Leo looked up at us all, puzzled, still licking his sticky fingers. Miles grabbed his son and his keys. "We're going to the ER right now." My father reached for his arm. "The last questions. We don't have to." "I don't give a damn," Miles roared. "My son could die." And just like that, we were moving again. All of us. Toward the hospital, toward the truth, toward the reckoning that none of us could outrun. Hospitals have a sound that gets under your skin. It isn't just the machines or the muffled footsteps. It's the hush of people trying not to break, of held breath, of prayers caught halfway between fear and hope. That's where we were. Miles, my father, and me, trapped in a waiting room where the past had finally caught up with us. Leo was in the emergency room behind double doors, surrounded by monitors and tubes too big for a 6-year-old frame. The nurses moved with silent precision. The doctor had taken the chocolate box with solemn care and said only one thing. "You did the right thing bringing him in immediately, but this is serious. Very serious." And then she disappeared. Now Miles sat slumped in a plastic chair, eyes glazed over, still clutching Leo's jacket like a talisman. I paced. My father stood in the corner, arms crossed so tightly across his chest, they looked fused to his ribs. He was silent for once until he wasn't. "You should have called me first," he said, voice low. "This didn't have to get this far." I turned to him slowly, deliberately. "You mean it didn't have to get out?" He met my gaze, and for a moment I saw the flicker of the old Harold Blake, the courtroom physician, the chess master, the man who could reframe guilt into duty in less than a sentence. "There are consequences," he said. "To this, legal, professional, permanent ones." "Tell that to Leo," I snapped. "Tell it to my 6-year-old nephew who's getting his stomach pumped because you hid drugs and dessert." Miles looked up then. His voice was hoarse, dry. "You risked my son's life, Dad, to save a few thousand. That's who you are now." My father straightened, indignation rising like a tide. "You don't understand how the system works. You think medicine is about healing. It's about billing codes. It's about red tape. I did what I had to do." Miles stood, calm, controlled, dangerous. "No, you did what you always do, whatever you want, however you want, and expect the rest of us to clean up the mess." My father's hands clenched. "I provided for this family. Everything you have, your education, your food, your goddamn clothes, was because I sacrificed and charged interest," I said quietly. He turned to me, eyes narrowing. "Excuse me?" I stepped closer. Not afraid anymore. Every gift came with strings. Every act of generosity was a transaction. "You didn't raise us, Dad. You brokered us." A beat of silence. Then my father laughed, cold and sharp. "Is that how you see it after everything I gave you?" "You gave us money," Miles said. "What we needed was safety." Another silence, this one heavier than footsteps. The doctor returned, clipboard in hand, expression unreadable. "Leo is stable," she said. We exhaled. Miles collapsing into the nearest chair like the air had just returned to the planet. But she continued. He was lucky. The dosage was dangerously high. 1 or 2 more pieces and the outcome could have been different. She looked at my father then. Direct. Professional. I need to ask, why was prescription medication inside a box of chocolates? My father opened his mouth and Miles cut in. I'll tell you. Our father's face drained of color. Don't, he whispered. Think carefully. I have, Miles said, for years. He turned to the doctor. Our father smuggled medication across the border. He hid it in the chocolates and sent them to Jordan without telling them. They gave them to us. We didn't know. The doctor's pen froze mid-word. Smuggled? Yes, I said softly. To avoid costs and scrutiny. The doctor nodded once stiffly. We'll need to file a report and likely involve law enforcement. My father finally spoke. A last desperate plea. You can't do this. I'll lose everything. I looked at him. Really? Looked. The once great man, the architect of our childhoods, now unraveling. You already have, I said, and we walked away. We didn't speak on the drive home. The car was silent except for the rhythmic sound of Leo's breathing in the back seat. His chest rose and fell steadily, wrapped in a navy blue blanket the hospital had let us borrow. Miles drove like a man walking through fog, his eyes fixed far ahead, seeing things only he could. I sat beside him, watching streetlights blur into one another like smudged stars. Our father wasn't with us. He'd stayed behind in the waiting room, surrounded by cold linoleum and consequences. But somehow his presence clung to us still, like smoke in a coat, like a ghost in the seams. When we got back to Miles' apartment, Leo was tucked gently into bed. Miles kissed his son's forehead like it was the only thing anchoring him to earth. Then he walked into the kitchen and opened a bottle of bourbon we both knew he kept for the bad nights, the Jessica nights. He poured 2 fingers and handed it to me before sliding down the wall to the floor. I don't know who I hate more, he said softly. Him or myself for not seeing it sooner. I didn't respond right away. I traced the rim of my glass, staring into amber like it might offer an answer. He taught us to rationalize him, I finally said. That was his greatest trick. He made cruelty look like care, made us feel grateful for surviving him. Miles let out a low, bitter laugh. God, he did. I sat beside him on the floor. We need to leave, I said, all of us. He turned to me, brows furrowed. Chicago further, I said. I spoke to Harriet, my boss. There's a senior position opening in Denver. New office, higher pay, full relocation package. He blinked, stunned. You want me to start over? I want us to start free. He looked at me for a long time, then nodded once like a man surrendering to the ocean because he knows he can swim. Okay. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with the chocolate box, the cursed thing that had detonated our old life, and stared at the empty spaces where 7 pieces had once been. And I realized this wasn't an ending. It was the first honest beginning we'd ever had. 2 weeks later, we were in Denver. The move was a ballet of logistics, rental applications, school transfers, job interviews for Miles. But it all moved with strange grace, as if the universe had been waiting for us to say yes to ourselves. Leo took to the new house like it was built for him. His room had mountains painted on the walls and a window that caught the morning light just right. I found a nearby therapist who specialized in childhood transitions. She told me children recover faster than adults. They believe in tomorrow more easily. I envied that. Miles landed a job at a farm-to-table restaurant, the kind of place with exposed brick and menus printed daily. For the first time in years, I saw him come home satisfied, not just tired. As for me, the Denver office was exactly what I needed. New walls, new faces. No one knew me as the child of Harold Blake. I was just Jordan, the creative lead, the one with ideas sharp enough to cut glass and soft enough to make clients cry. And then, of course, he found us. It began with a bouquet. White lilies? No card. Then came the letters handwritten, perfectly spaced. I made a mistake. Let me fix it. Then the gifts. A limited edition sketchbook I'd mentioned in passing years ago, a leather knife roll for Miles, a telescope for Leo. We returned none of them, and acknowledged even less. But the final straw came when Miles came home, pale, shaking. He was inside, he whispered. What the house? Ours. He convinced the landlord he was inspecting for mold. I stood there, heart pounding, hands numb. That night, we filed for a restraining order. The judge read the medical reports. He listened to the story. He signed the order without blinking. 3 days later, Harold retaliated. Miles received a letter from a law firm. His father was demanding immediate repayment of the $47,000 he loaned him after Jessica died. That was a gift, Miles said. He swore it was a gift. I opened a spreadsheet. We'll pay it, I said, piece by piece on our terms, not his. The next morning, I moved money from my savings, recalculated our budget, and emailed our lawyer. We would not owe him anything. Not financially, not emotionally, not ever again. We had severed the chain, and chains don't come back once they've been melted down to nothing. Autumn arrived like a soft exhale. The air in Denver turned crisp, laced with the scent of pine and distant firewood. Leaves fell like golden confetti outside our windows. And for the first time in years, maybe ever, I didn't feel like I was bracing for something. I was just living. Leo had settled into his new school beautifully. He came home with glitter in his hair and stories about volcano experiments and lunchroom debates about which dinosaur was the most powerful. I watched him from the kitchen window one afternoon, running laps in the backyard, Cape flying behind him, alive in a way he hadn't been in Boston. Miles cooked most nights now, real meals. He sang under his breath while chopping vegetables, and the creases in his forehead had begun to fade. He even started dating again, someone kind, grounded, someone who asked about Leo first. As for me, I rediscovered my voice. Not just the one I used in presentations and pitch meetings, but the one I'd buried beneath years of forced compliance. I started drawing again, not for clients or campaigns, but for me. For the first time in a decade, I filled a sketchbook cover to cover. We were by all measures rebuilding. And then, of course, he returned. Not physically this time, but through a letter delivered by certified mail. The return address was unfamiliar, likely a rental apartment. The handwriting, however, was unmistakable. Harold Blake. The letter was 4 pages long, half confession, half manipulation, a twisted gospel of guilt and self-justification. I lost everything, he wrote. My license, my name, my standing. But what hurts most is losing you. He ended with a plea. Let's not rewrite history with bitterness. I am still your father. I folded the letter, placed it back in its envelope, and slid it into the drawer where I kept the other artifacts from that life. A wedding photo of my parents, the deed to the Denver house, and the hospital report from the night everything changed. I didn't respond because sometimes the silence is the loudest form of truth. 6 months passed. Then one morning, while preparing Leo's lunch, I heard him ask Miles, "Why don't we ever talk to Grandpa?" The air tightened. Miles looked at me. I nodded. It was time. Because, he said gently, some people in our family forgot what love is supposed to look like, and until they remember, we keep a safe distance. Leo nodded like that made perfect sense, then asked for extra applesauce. That night, as the house settled into its familiar quiet, I stepped out onto the porch with a blanket and my sketch pad. Above me, the sky was velvet black, stars scattered, like spilled sugar, the same sky Harold once told me to chart constellations underback when I still thought his love was something I had to earn. Miles joined me, 2 mugs in hand, hot cider. His eyes were tired but content. "You think he'll ever show up again?" he asked. "Maybe," I said, "but I won't answer the door." He chuckled, handed me a mug, and sat beside me. You think we're doing it right, raising Leo without the legacy. I looked back toward the window where Leo sat in his pajamas, building a solar system out of clay. I think, I said slowly, we're showing him that family isn't about fear. It's about freedom. It's about choosing peace over control, kindness over loyalty to pain. Miles was quiet for a long time. Then he raised his mug to rebellion. He said, the quiet kind. We clinked mugs, and in that moment I felt it fully. Not victory, not vengeance, but clarity. Harold had ruled us for years without raising a hand. Only his voice, his disapproval, his looming shadow. But now his voice held no power. His shadow didn't reach this far. We had broken the pattern, rewritten the script. We weren't his story anymore. We were ours. 1 year after the night of the chocolates, Leo turned 7. We threw a science-themed party in the backyard, complete with dry ice volcanoes, galaxy cupcakes, and a cardboard rocket big enough for 2. My mother Vivian flew in from Arizona. She brought a telescope as a gift, and she and Leo spent the evening pointing at Saturn's rings. Later, when the kids were asleep and the party lights dimmed, Vivian took my hand. You've built something beautiful here, she said. Out of ashes, I smiled. Turns out fire can be useful, I replied. And as the stars blinked above us, quiet and steady, I finally understood what freedom truly meant. Not escape, not revenge, but the power to choose peace. Again and again and again. If you've made it this far, thank you. Jordan's story wasn't just about escaping control. It was about reclaiming my voice, my peace, and the kind of love that doesn't come with strings attached. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Your city, your country, or maybe even your own story of healing and quiet rebellion. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that it's never too late to break free from the past and build a future on your own terms. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being part of this journey. Until next time, take care of your heart and never forget.